Hi, I'm Annabelle.
And I'm Amy, and welcome to Escape Purgatory, a podcast where we rewatch Supernatural and then talk it through in the hopes that we can finally escape this show.
Join us each week and leave comments on upcoming episodes, and together we can escape Supernatural Purgatory.
Hi.
Hello. Well, what a fun one, right?
Yes.
What a fun one. This was Kripke and members of staff getting frustrated at execs, surely, right?
I mean, I guess so. Yeah, actually, to be fair, some of the comments in this, you're like, these are some digs, yeah.
Yes. How many of these conversations did they actually have with people who didn't understand the show?
Well, it is said in some of the trivia that I read that some of the notes that this studio exec gives the directors were actual notes that they got from the network at times. So, many.
Yes. Yeah, so this episode is season 2, episode 18, Hollywood Babylon. Every time I think of this episode, I always think it's called Hotel Babylon, but I think that's either a song or a show or something. I don't know why those two words in my mind are together, but they are. Okay. So I have to keep telling myself, no, it's not Hotel Babylon, it's Hollywood Babylon.
I mean, I think the title's based on a book, right? That was written about this kind of seedy underbelly of Hollywood, which kind of fits into this, I guess, a little bit. But they could have gone further with those themes, I guess. But I appreciate them for keeping it light and funny this episode.
Especially after Heart. That was too much.
Yeah, too much. So this episode on IMDb got an 8.6 out of 10, which I was like, this is low. This is a 10 out of 10 episode. It must be a 9, but okay, fine. Written by my boy, Ben Edlund.
Your boy.
And directed by Phil Segrisha. Now, I know I said before, I'd like to talk to Sarah Gamble, but can I change my answer and say if I could talk to any writer on the show, it would be Ben Edlund. I just want to talk to him. I have questions, please. There are other episodes coming up that he's written that stick more in my mind as to why though? For good reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, there was one line in this episode that made me rage cry. I've never had to rage cry before.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, oh, we'll get to it because I wrote it down. I was heated.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this.
So yeah, I guess we can jump right in.
Yes, we can. The beginning of this episode is great, first of all. So it cuts straight into a cabin in the woods. And it's very horror movie trope. It immediately made me think of the movie Cabin in the Woods. For obvious reasons. There's a few different things in this. There's a water tower, they're in the woods, blah, blah, blah. And this girl is kind of walking around looking kind of scared. And this guy runs up to her, kind of explains the situation in a weird kind of way, and then runs off. And something creeps up on her. And we get a full face scream into the camera. But it's a bit crap.
Is lacking some oomph, as it were.
Yeah, there's something that's not quite working.
I think you can tell definitely when something's wrong because it lasts too long.
Yes. I mean, this actress does a great job because she's almost the scream doesn't reach her eyes. I think that's what it is. As well as the noise, you can just see that it's wrong. And I think it's great to be able to act things badly. I think that must be a skill, right?
Mm-hmm. Then we sort of see the camera work, or the camera rig, and the director yells cut and pulls her aside and says, no, it's good, but you gotta work on that scream. And she's like, yeah, I know. And her excuse is that she has to scream at a tennis ball. Mm-hmm. And, she can't get the feeling. And he's like, well, it'll be better in CG. Do you want to see the the concept art of what the creature's going to look like, which looks like Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
Like the skull's on fire and he's in like a leather jacket type thing. They go to like their actors' chairs, and the other guy who she was acting against is there, and they're talking to sort of like this electrician. He's explaining that the set might be haunted.
Yes.
And that, you know, all these deaths have happened here, and, you know, you shouldn't stick around after shooting.
Yeah, he does a great job at like just being exposition. Like, you know.
He's like the creepy custodian in like a haunted school or something, like telling the kids like, oh, when I'm here at night, I hear these weird noises kind of thing. Very much like teen horror movie style. Exactly.
Yeah.
Then she's off by herself and she's practicing lines. I was wondering like, she's practicing lines and like her scream, but it's like a whisper scream.
Yeah.
It's like how do you do that? When I was watching that, I was like, this is obviously this is going to take a lot of tropes from their set.
Yeah.
When I was watching this, their set, they're going to probably put in to the episode. So I'm wondering who does that, like who goes off and just sort of like paces and practices their lines and like whispers.
That's a good point, actually. I love that.
I think right now probably Jensen.
Yeah, I thought the same.
Does this? But in later seasons, I think Misha.
Oh yes. Oh bless. Yeah, I think so. Oh.
He must have to practice his lines so many times just to not crack under under pressure, essentially. But then she starts to hear something, and it's like sort of like a whimpering kind of noise, and she sort of looks up towards the rafters / rigs, and we see the electrician, and he's like dead.
Yeah, super dead.
Like, super dead. Blood and stuff dripping out of his face. Gross. And she gets the scream. She gets it. So this is where usually we cut to the title card, but no, it goes to the director, and he's like, "That's it."
Yeah.
And then it's the title card. Like, how can you not love this episode? I know it's extremely meta and like has all these references that we're going to try and get some of them. We're not going to get all of them because we'll be here all day. But this is great. This is what you needed after Heart. Like, you couldn't have anything too serious.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was saying before about like what's the bread of these funny sandwiches, and like Heart is on one side of this, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, they definitely are giving us a break, I guess. But yeah, there are a lot of Easter eggs in this. Like, already in this opening shot, there's been like the water towers from Crossroads Blues. That's the one I immediately recognized. There are other set pieces in this from other episodes so far. And again, I'm not going to list them all, but if you have any that we missed during this episode, please send them to us and maybe we'll add them into our season wrap up.
So we come back from, we're at like the sound studio, I don't know, where all of the sound stages are. And Sam and Dean are just on a tour. Dean is like, he's in Disney World for the first time ever. Did you notice they used the gag reel music?
Yeah, I had to pause it and like take a little laughing moment of like, oh my god. Yeah, it's the gag reel music.
As they're going around like watching the thing, and like Dean's he sat next to this kid who's eating an ice cream, and he's sort of pointing out where certain things were filmed.
Yeah.
Like which soundstage did what movie, and he's like unimpressed. And I kind of understand that because I have been like in Disneyland in LA. They do like a studio tour like this. There is always that one person who just talks the entire time when you're trying to listen to the guide. So I can kind of understand this particular person.
It just makes me imagine that it must be a really irritating experience to watch a movie with Dean, because I bet you he talked through the movie. You know, like pointing out
Yes.
things like, oh, this bit's really cool, or just wait till you watch this stunt, or like gets way too into it. And I'm a watch movies in complete silence kind of person.
Yeah. It depends on who I'm with. Some people, if they start talking to me about it and I've already seen it, I might say something, but like, I'll try not to give away what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then if I'm in like a movie theater, silence. And people around me have to be silent.
I agree.
I think I told you the story, but when I went to go see Avengers Endgame, so like the conclusion of this 10-year saga, I had 2 people talking the entire movie.
Oh, so mad. Like, that movie was probably the noisiest cinema I've ever been in. I think people were just very, very excited, but it was very cliche. Like, they all did the gasp, you know, at the gasp moment in that movie. Including me. I was like,
So I did the same thing, and the people who were next to me brought their kids. The kids have been quiet the entire time.
Yeah.
And the kid gasped too.
Yeah.
And said something. And she had the nerve to shush him.
Oh.
To shush him. I'm like, no, you don't know what's just happened. This is life-changing right here.
Yeah. So they're doing this tour. There's a couple of references here as they're going along.
Now to the right here is Stars Hollow. It's the setting for the television series Gilmore Girls. And if we're lucky, we might even catch one of the show's stars.
Come on, let's finish the tour.
Which Jared Padalecki played a character called Dean in that show. Sam's face, like, I love that he looks so nervous about it. Like, what were you doing? Were you moonlighting as an actor? Like, while you were at Stanford? Like, why are you so cagey about this? Is this the headcanon that, like, actually Sam Winchester is in Gilmore Girls and just never told anyone about it? Like,
you know, I'm gonna agree with your headcanon just because you're right. Like, when the tour guy says, oh, we might be able to see a few of the cast members, that's when they move.
Yeah.
That's when Sam's like, okay, we gotta go.
Like, I know obviously it's a joke, but also the timelines work out, so you know.
Yep.
As they get off the car, you also hear the tour guide in the background talking about where they filmed like Lois and Clark, which is a small reference to Jensen because he was on Smallville, and also Bob Singer because he worked on that show. So this is where I was gonna say this is where the Easter eggs start. They already started, like, beginning this episode, first shot. So Dean's really excited to be there, as we've said, and he was saying like that they were gonna take a vacation in LA essentially, but they've ended up working a case, which he doesn't seem too kind of bothered about. But it's like, yeah, you know, he wanted to be at the pool and stuff, and I still maintain we should have got to see them in some, like, terrible motel pool or, like, at the beach. Anyway. And Sam says, does this seem like swimming pool weather to you? This is practically Canadian. Because obviously this is actually being filmed in Vancouver, not LA. So, not even the last reference they make to it being in Canada. Like,
No.
To be fair to them, they do mention heart very briefly in this episode, because Sam's saying, well, like, Dean's getting all excited that he doesn't want a vacation, like, he just wants to work after the events of that episode, actually calling back to something traumatic that happened to them. Character development.
And look who wrote the episode.
Yes, my boy.
But so they did one callback, right, to Madison. But they haven't done any to, like, Sarah.
No, you know. Well, she's on the other side of the country now, too far away for Sam to care about, I guess.
That's true. That's true. She's in New England and they're in LA.
Again, making a few references here because they're saying they're here to solve a case, that there's been a death on the set and they thought they'd check it out because there was also, like, ghost stories surrounding it. Dean references Poltergeist, which is, like, one of those films sets that's said to be haunted. There are a few others I can think of. The one that always sticks out in my mind is the Crow movies. I used to be a really big fan of them when I was a teenager. And they are always said to be at least cursed, if not haunted. So I think that's called like Hollywood lore.
Omen as well, The Omen. Has
Yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff. Like, basically, I think The Exorcist too.
Mm-hmm.
There were some weird things that happen on set. It's always the ghost movies and the possession movies that have the weird stuff. So I'm pretty sure the same stuff that happens in this episode is what happens on those.
Yeah. You never hear about, say, like, the Legally Blonde film set being haunted, right?
Exactly. I love that Dean calls it cultural heritage.
He's absolutely 100% correct.
He is, but it's just funny to call it that in my mind.
I guess. Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. Cause, yeah. So Sam tells Dean that about the movie that they're going to go look at the set for, and that the person who found the body was Tara. Is it Tara or Tara? Tara. Mm-hmm. Was Tara Benchley, and like Dean's super excited. And he names some films that she's been in, which this actress has not been in these films, by the way. They just added them in for references. It's Fear.com and Ghost Ship. Both, I've seen both those films. They're both like B-movie, you know.
Yeah.
Those really early 2000s horror movies, they're all kind of the same. Yeah.
And they're making another one. This is what it is. Like, looking back on it, actually, this whole movie sequence makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that they're making this movie at this time, because I was like, this is kind of a weird, like, horror movie to make, but actually, it's not.
No, if you're thinking, like, 2007, I think it is now.
Yeah.
Like, what movies were we watching then? I'm trying to think. Land of the Dead, I'm pretty sure we saw that. That was a really bad zombie movie.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't go to the movies that often then. But yeah, that's... Like, Scary Movie came out, I think, then, and like...
There was a lot of, like, Japanese horror as well. Like, I remember The Ring.
yeah.
That was maybe a little bit earlier. But, like, that whole thing was still going. Like, Dark Water, I'm pretty sure I went to watch that. It was during zombies. Like, 2007, 2008 was, like, the zombie craze.
Yeah, the start of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like 28 Days Later, too.
Yeah, those kinds of movies, exactly.
So, they make it appear that it's so easy just to walk around on set in this.
Yeah, they do.
Like, they don't have name tags. They don't have anything. Like, I don't know what the security was like in 2007 for film stages.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure there would be at least somebody that would, like, call them out.
There must be someone to stop you from doing exactly what they've done, which is leaving a tour and having a wander around. Like, come on. So as they walk into the studio that the film's being filmed in, it has like a big number 4, I think, on the door. I think we see it now. We may see it later. But that big door with the number 4 on is seen again in 2 other Supernatural episodes, which I'm sure you can like guess which ones they are, of like Changing Channels and The French Mistake. So are they trying to say that all these are happening in the same? Like, anyway. As they walk in, there's like a studio exec. You kind of know he is because he's wearing a suit and a Bluetooth headpiece. Like,
like he thinks he's someone important.
Yeah. This guy's name is Brad. Oh, there are so many character names in this episode, so apologies in advance. We're going to get them mixed up.
Yes.
Yeah. He's played by Gary Cole, who I recognize from loads of other stuff, but I like immediately can't place him like in anything.
Yeah, he was in Office Space. That's where I recognize him from.
Ah, okay.
He's the manager, and he's like, so yeah, I'm gonna have to have you do this, and like that's basically his entire thing is. So yeah, like every single time, that's how he talks to the guy. That movie was great. Like for being filmed in 1999. It's so reminiscent of now, which is really depressing.
I need to rewatch that one, I think. He's talking to I think like the director and the writer, like I'm not sure. These people look the same to me in this episode. But he's giving them some notes about the film.
No, look, don't get me wrong. Everyone at the studio loves the dailies, myself included. We were just wondering if it could be, you know, a little brighter.
Brighter?
Yeah, Jay. More color. Make sure you know what I'm saying. You're the master of that stuff.
Brad, this is a horror movie.
And who says horror has to be dark? You know, it's sort of depressing, don't you think?
Yep.
This was a real conversation that was had, for sure.
Absolutely it was.
What I love about this particular segment is, you know, he's talking about being brighter and with more color. Well, at this point, it's really bright.
Yeah.
And I think it's as another producer, it's Jay Wiley. He's wearing like a red shirt. So it's like, here's your brighter and here's your color.
I mean, yes. Like, to be fair, the first few seasons of Supernatural are very dark to the point where sometimes you can't see what's going on, but also it's like the aesthetic, so it's fine. And as I've said, these are apparently based on some real notes that they were given from this show. He sees Dean as they walk in, and I don't know why do you think as Dean and Sam walk in, the studio exec immediately goes, Dean, you're a PA. Like, what about his face says, I'm a PA?
Dean's face looks like he's like awe-inspired, like in awe, right?
Yeah.
With being on set. And I think, now this is all speculation, and just sort of like the stories you kind of hear of like actors. So sometimes what actors will do is be a PA on set to be on set, essentially. They look like actors, right?
Yes, they do.
They're very tall, they're handsome, so, and they're not part of the movie. So his mind is probably, since he's supposed to be an exec, he sees these kind of people all the time.
Yeah.
So he knows he's not an actor in the movie, so he has to be something. So he's a PA.
So anyway, this guy asked Dean to make him a smoothie or get him a smoothie. And as he walks off, Dean asks Sam, like, what's a PA?
What's a PA? I think they're kind of like slaves.
And then they do something that they hardly ever do in Supernatural and do a screen wipe. Did you see it?
They do two. I was like, what? Why? And those are actually there's one other one that happens a little bit later. I was like, what?
They might have have done a star wipe for how out of place it looked. They might have just gone the full shebang and done a star wipe. So
like it swipes to like some kind of, it's like a higher up PA because she's like telling people to reset something, and then it swipes again and it's Dean, and now he's carrying trays of smoothies and sort of like handing them out to people. Like as he's walking around, he's looking up into the rafters / rigs. He sort of sees this stairway, so he puts the drinks down and starts to go up. Now, if you ever get on a set, don't ever do this because they're really dangerous. Like, if you knock something, you could hurt someone really badly.
Yeah.
Because this is where all the lights are. This is all like, I mean, it should all be up there securely, but like, if you don't know what you're doing and you just sort of walk up to all these electrical stuff, you could get really hurt and you could hurt somebody else. So don't do this. I mean, don't do anything that they do in Supernatural, really. But this in particular, don't do. But as he's walking up, they are ready to go film. It's kind of interesting. I wonder why they do this, because there's certain phrases that you have to say before you film. Yeah. And there's none of that. Like, so it's like sound, and they say roll sound, speeding, I think, camera rolling, and then action. But you don't hear any of that. It's just like, and we're a go kind of stuff.
So a little backstage into my life. I went to go watch a TV show being recorded the other day, and this is just like a news panel show kind of thing. And you're right about the rigging. There's like a ton of it. But because this was being filmed so quickly, they often like counted people in as well, like almost silently. So like a 3, 2, 1 kind of thing. But you could definitely hear while people were obviously like performing that like people were still like talking in the background about cameras and sounds and all that kind of stuff, just like really quietly. Yeah, it was super. It's super interesting to watch it from that side, I think.
Yeah, definitely. When I was doing my graduate degree, I went. So I did photography, and I had a friend in the film department who needed behind the scenes camera work done or pictures taken. So I mean, it's a little different what I was doing, like what they were doing versus a soundstage and everything, but it's essentially the same kind of thing. Like, you know, nobody shouted like quiet on set
No.
to let everybody know that they're about to. Well, she does actually. She says quiet for the bell, and the bell rings.
Yeah.
This makes more sense because obviously you can hear a bell further than you can hear like someone yell.
Yeah.
But you don't hear anything else.
No.
But anyway, I guess I was going to say maybe it gets a little confusing, but they know what they're like. They've already done all of that stuff to film this scene.
Oh no, I can't stop thinking about how they filmed this stuff because it's so silly. Like cameras on cameras. Like
It's probably all fake cameras too, or it might be real. I don't know.
I think it'd just be easier to just bring in spare cameras, right? You already have all the stuff, like.
And so we see the actors now, I guess. They're in the cabin, and like, okay, how much of the movie do we want to describe that's happening? Because it's not really that important, really.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think so.
Yeah, but anyway, so she's reading from a book in Latin, and then it shows the people behind the camera, and they're really entrapped. Like the director's really into this. Big G's really into this. And Dean's looking around with his EMF thingy, and they get a cut's called, basically. Dean is obviously now at the food table, and he's eating. Like this is another one of those like classic Dean moments with food.
Yeah.
The onion. Come on. It's so gross. It's so gross. Just like, why? Nobody eats like that.
Look, if you're going to be here calling me out for how I... No, I'm joking. As a fellow messy eater, like, I'm fully on board with this. Dean, you do you.
Really? Like, you let a piece of onion, you don't, like, just...
Like, if you're still chewing and it's just there and it's, like, not going to fall out of your mouth, like, what's the problem? Everyone's like, Amy's disgusting. Sometimes the food's just too good. So I love this because I think he talks about like it's the Philly cheesesteaks line, which is like classic.
Food these people get? Are you kidding me? I mean, look at these things. They're like miniature Philly cheesesteak sandwiches. They're delicious.
I love that he kind of like is asking like Sam a question about this, and Sam actually has to take a moment to take in what Dean's doing before answering him. Like, it's such a good thing. But
like he's distracted by the onion too. Can you just put it back in your mouth, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry. So Sam gives the story of the episode. So there's 4 people who have died in this studio. That's basically all he's found out. There were 4 people who died here, so maybe it is haunted. And behind Sam, Dean spots Tara and kind of grabs and just walks off. Like, bye, Sam. Like, Sam really gets a short end of the stick in this episode because Dean's so not interested in anything Sam's doing at all. Considering they're supposed to be here to cheer him up, he's like, no, bye. It's like, this is my thing.
So I think it's also a little bit to do with like they are talking a little bit about the case. So he knows that Tara saw the body. So I think it's more that now it's a mixture of the two. It's a mixture of like he wants to go meet her, and he wants to find out more information about the case. I do love how he walks over. He like steals a piece of paper
Mm-hmm.
from somebody and like they look affronted but don't say anything.
I mean, yeah.
I guess it's all about confidence. Like you just do things and just like that's it.
Absolutely.
And then we see Dean act, which we haven't seen him do in quite some time. Like,
yeah.
I was also like, is he actually, because he's acting kind of nervous, like he doesn't know what he's doing and like this and the other. But at the same time, we also know he acts that way when he talks to girls he likes sometimes.
It's really hard. Yeah, because what is it Dean being nervous around this woman that he has watched movies of and likes? Or is it him being like kind of bashful to try and get information out of her rather than sort of his normal, I would say, kind of obnoxious flirting? I think you're right. I think he is putting on a front here.
Because he kind of, I'm not going to say seamlessly because it's not. He then sort of asks her about Frank, who's the electrician who died, and she's like, "No, it's fine. I can talk about it. Nobody wants to ask me about it because they'll think I'm crazy." She describes what she saw, and Dean's like, "Well, nobody seems to know who he is, like, or anything." And she says, "Oh well, you know, just to pass time, I take Polaroids on set."
Yeah, and
shows him the picture that she took of them together. He has this like reaction of almost like, "Oh, you son of a bitch." Not really. It's like a milder version.
Yeah. No, he says son of a bitch. He definitely says it, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, because Dean clearly recognises him because he's a massive nerd. But
yes.
There's a few different things in this conversation that I absolutely love. So, first of all, when he's first talking to Tara, he's saying about like, "Oh, I loved you in Boogeyman." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, that was a horrible script." So Eric Kripke wrote that script for that movie. So that's a nice little shading of Kripke there. And then the Polaroid thing. So, yeah, apparently Jensen himself, like, I don't know if he still does, but at the time that this was being filmed, he used to take Polaroids of like crew and people around to kind of, I guess, pass the time, as Tara says here. What's really interesting here is that they kind of basically made her into Jensen. Like even her character in the film that they're shooting is kind of almost like Dean. Like she says a lot like "son of a bitch," and
this is true.
Has that kind of, I don't know, she seems to be the main character, I guess, in this movie. And I just kind of thought that was super interesting. I really appreciated this little addition actually into, because I thought that was quite a sweet addition that they added that in of Jensen's like taking pictures of people on set. Yeah.
I wonder that there wasn't really a prankster on set, which is like, they kind of didn't include Sam in this or Jared. Actually, no, they did. Yeah. But he's not really in it for very long because when she was reading from the book, like the guy like makes a comment.
Yeah.
And she messes up. And because of the other actor, which is exactly what Jared does, messes like, people up.
That laugh actually at the end of that little bit that they do where they kind of cut and they all laugh about it and she's like, you guys, it's very reminiscent of any kind of gag reel that you've seen of them. So yeah, I think that is the reference. On recognition of this Polaroid, because I was originally like, well, how does he know this guy? But it does become clear because they turn up at this guy's house and it's the electrician who's supposed to be dead. And Dean recognises him from, again, like a load of B movies. Like, he seems to have been like an extra or like, do you say like guy who dies on train or something? Like, I can't remember what it was. But,
like, Stormtrooper number 3.
Yeah, exactly.
You were Desert Soldier number 4 in Metal Storm Destruction of Gerard St.
I was.
I knew I recognized you. I am a huge fan. I mean, your turn as a tractor crash victim in Critters 3.
Critters 3.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, well, please. Come in.
Oh.
But this convinces the guy enough to let them into his house because they seem to be fans. And, like, to be fair, I put here that, like, Dean recognises him and I put a question mark and I was like, oh, they definitely researched this guy. But actually, No, Dean did fully recognise him because he did from that picture. So all that nerd knowledge is just coming out of his brain by itself.
Yes, absolutely. Like I think they did do a little bit of research, but so like they could call out some of his films, like the first one. But when Dean continues to talk, Sam looks at him like, "How do you know this?"
Yeah.
And then we get like a pan of all these headshots. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, could this actually be this guy's real headshot?
Maybe.
They could very well be. But they're reference to something, but I don't really know. Like, because it's a clown, but it's like not. It's almost like a minstrel clown. It's not a great look. And there's like this 70s serial killer look. I would say like, not obnoxious, but like, yeah, maybe obnoxious, like actor apartment. Like, these are all my headshots and all my movie posters and all this like stuff like I've been in. Come to my house and relish in me, kind of thing.
I don't know how I feel about that. Like, they do. To be fair, they do make fun of that in The French Mistake. Yeah, no, yeah, it's a little odd. Just have pictures of yourself. I think if you're you and someone else, it's less weird. I think if it's just you, it's a little weird.
Yeah, because like one, it's in your house and it's like your headshots.
Yeah.
Like, who are you trying to impress? Apart from like the people who are around you. Mm-hmm. Gerard St James is his actual name.
Yeah.
In this, basically, he was hired by the producers to drum up drama for the movie.
Yeah.
To basically create hype in production so that when it comes out, people will talk about it, which is it's exactly what happened with Poltergeist, right? Exactly. And all those other movies.
Yeah.
Like all these like stories that were on set made it so that you wanted to go see it because of all this stuff that happened.
He says a really interesting line here. So they're all kind of sat around talking about how this is fake and he was just a heel, etc. And they kind of ask him like why he did it or something, and he says,
"Isn't that kind of cruel? They're messing with their heads like that."
Hey, I just play the part. I don't write the script.
And like it cuts to Dean and he kind of makes a face, and like I hope no one ever takes that out of context. It just made me think of.
So the line is what made me rage. He says, "Isn't that cruel to mess with their heads like that?" I'm like, yes it is. It's very messed up to mess with people like that, isn't it, writers? Isn't it, writers, to mess with your fans' heads? So much rage.
I just... Like, how are they writing meta before the meta existed, if that makes sense, you know? Like...
Yeah. This is head scratching. And so much rage. So much rage. So they understood what they were going to do to us. They knew it. They knew what they were going to do to the fans with their writing.
Say what you really think, Annabelle. Yeah, I don't know. It just, again, like this conversation, I guess because it was quite meta about like just acting what's written and like, yeah, it's basically all the writer's fault. Like, what are you trying to say, Supernatural? Like, what are you trying to do?
I wonder. So a lot of these like comments that are made are in response to something, right?
Yeah.
I wonder what this was in response to. Like, what were Gerard and Jensen receiving in the mail at this point? Or like Eric or Kripke, what was he receiving in the mail at this point to be like, because they're just acting what's written, they're not writing it.
Food for thought. It's interesting. Like, is this from like fan interactions? Is this from reviews they've got? Is this from studio execs saying something? Like, where is this coming from? Anyway, so once they realise that it's all been a ruse, Sam goes to leave. But Dean's still nerding out, and he asks him what it's like to work with like Richard Mole, and like they I just put like Dean is in his element, essentially. He has a back and forth with this guy, like the guy's trying to get him to come to this show, free steak, etc. But yeah, they got all the information that they needed from him.
So they then go back on set, and it's now a different actress who's like on screen.
Mm-hmm.
And then it cuts to the sound guy, and he starts to hear this kind of weird noise in the recording. It gets called cut, and the sound's like, no, we have to go again for sound because we picked up stuff. Everybody seems really annoyed. And then the producer, or the executive producer, has some comments.
Not problems, it's questions.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, the rules aren't really landing for me. Like, the kids do this Latin chant, and that makes the ghosts show up?
Yeah.
Well, see, but if the ghosts are in hell, how do they hear the chanting? I mean, well, they have super hearing? Well, it's a logic bump. The rules don't track.
Questions from Houses of the Holy, because that's the only time we've seen sort of like summoning of a ghost.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they did this exact thing, didn't they, in Roadkill, because they were talking about how salt is like purifies spirits or whatever. They were doing this exact thing there, like explaining that, and they're again like, yeah, the summoning ghosts thing. I don't know, but again, if these are comments that have actually come from like the network, is like, how does that actually work? Like, why this? Why that? And like, it kind of, it's interesting when you do think, because if you do think like dialogue in these shows, particularly Supernatural, like you would never have that conversation. It is very unnatural. Like you wouldn't say these explaining things or this exposition. So I don't know. I think it's just pointing to how they have to write things in to explain things to an audience, even though it isn't like, naturally done like that. Yeah,
definitely. But it's also kind of funny that, because he's talking about the rules of summoning a ghost. Like, why is it this? But we talk about supernatural law and rules all the time, which is like, but I feel like we do it in a way that is not so like condescending. I feel.
I would hope so.
Most of the time it's like, though they haven't established this yet, or they kind of like, they're feeling it out as to how they want to show these kind of monsters. Like I think back to like Heart, with the werewolves. We don't know much about werewolves yet.
No.
I guess our biggest thing was the fact that like supposedly all these monsters are extinct, but actually there's a whole bunch of them. That's probably the one thing that we're like,
yeah,
you do have to explain that one. For all the experts, there are still a lot of them out there.
Yeah, I think that's the major, like, really, guys, really. So this studio exec Brad walks off, and he sees like a grayscale woman. She looks like a movie starlet. I really like this kind of makeup. I've seen people do it really well, like where they look like they're black and white in like a colour setting. I just think it looks really awesome. He kind of critiques her. Like, because obviously he thinks that she's just part of the film set. And then she undoes her robe and walks away from him, and he follows her, which, okay, super creep.
Yep, basically.
Yep. And then it cuts back to them filming, and I love that they put the explainer in there.
We read from that book. We must have brought them back. Back from hell.
But I don't understand. If they were in hell, how could they hear her chanting?
They must have super hearing.
And then, as they're filming, the roof, I guess, of the cabin falls in, and Brad is hanging. And obviously, everyone's pretty freaked out.
So we know she's a ghost. She also like taps him on the shoulder after like flittering. What's that called?
Phasing.
What are we calling that? Phasing? You want to call it phasing? Okay. And I was just like, well, we find out who she is, and she's from the 1930s, right? So she wouldn't have been painted black and white. So why is she black and white?
I guess she's appearing as her movie persona, which suggests that ghosts have an opinion on how they look. It almost like they can decide that.
I guess so.
Because maybe she only thinks of herself how she saw herself behind the camera. So that's how she appears.
That one needs an explainer.
Yeah, to be fair, that was weird, actually. I never thought of that. Like, why is she in black and white?
Because like in black and white movies, they didn't make them. They didn't paint them black and white.
I mean, yeah, I know. It's like, and like we've seen other ghosts from like the 1800s who aren't just like black and white, because that, like, you can't say that ghosts can only appear if they're in media. Like, you know.
Yeah.
I think I'm going with my explanation of, like, I guess ghosts appear how they saw themselves. So, because to be fair, they don't. Okay, now I'm going there somewhere with this. I'm doing the explainer. They don't always appear in the clothes that they died in, right? Because think of Provenance. They appeared as they were in the painting, yeah? Mm-hmm. So it must be... But then if you think to Roadkill, she's still wearing the same clothes that she was wearing when she was driving, but that's because that was her last memory of her being alive. I think that's it.
So it's the last memory of you being alive?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Yeah. But it still doesn't explain the black and white thing, actually.
It's the aesthetic. We'll just go with that.
I liked it, though. I did enjoy it.
No, me too. I mean, I know I should let people enjoy things, but that stuck out so much to me. I was like, what?
There's obviously a hard cut here, and it comes back, and they are in the cabin again. Like, they're talking about... Like, so clearly nothing's changed. And they're talking about why does salt keep ghosts away? They kind of think it's stupid. I think this is the actress saying this. And the director asking about, like, why they haven't shut it down. And I think the guy next to him says, like, well, we had a moment of silence. Like, he's just a studio exec guy, which is just so callous. Like, yeah. But you can almost be like, well, yeah, probably people do speak like this.
Yeah, this I mean, this is the whole, like, the Babylon part of it, right?
Yeah.
The seedy part of... Because, I mean, he wasn't a good... Like, he was just going to follow this naked lady up, obviously, to, like, get it on.
Yep. As they're having this conversation in the scene, the Brady guy, the college guy, actor, they're doing a scene where Tara says, like, I love you, and he says, I know, which is the first time they do this Star Wars reference, and I was just like, ooh. Look, I love it. That's my favourite Star Wars reference. Before shouting cut, like, there's obviously something not right with Tara, like, she doesn't seem very happy. And then we cut to Dean shouting, that's a cut, guys! Like, wearing his little headset.
Yeah. He's fully engrossed himself into the role of being a PA at this point. The reason why there was a cut was because Tara's like, why are ghosts afraid of salt? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And so the director calls to the writer, is there something else they could be afraid of? And they say shotguns. And that makes even less sense. And so it's like, again, this is probably people who've never looked into, like, superstition. Mm-hmm. You know, why you throw salt over your shoulder and all this other stuff. And then someone probably is like, well, why do they have all these guns for ghosts?
The thing is, that's kind of one of the first clues as to what's going on in this, is the fact that they do have salt, because I wouldn't say that any other horror movies at this point had established salt as like a getting rid of ghosts thing. So the fact they were so closely linked to hunting is quite an interesting one.
So I recently rewatched Hocus Pocus, and they do use salt in that to keep away the Sanderson sisters. But I mean, I would have completely agreed with you had I not just watched that movie.
After they talk about salt, Dean we see Dean grinning, like, oh, I love it so much. He looks so happy here. I noticed he's wearing a crew t-shirt for the film. Like, where did he even get that? Like, go you, stealing stuff. As they're talking about shotguns, we can see that another guy comes on and he's quite upset. His name is Walter, and he's introduced. He had been introduced previously when Dean was talking to Tara and like as a PA because he handed her like some Snapple. There's a lot of Snapple in this episode.
Do you think that was just like on set? Like that's actually what they have?
Maybe. Like honestly, what's real, what's fiction in this episode? Who knows?
Right.
He's quite upset because he thinks shotguns are stupid, basically. So Sam kind of walks up and asks Dean how it's going, and Dean immediately launches into this whole explanation about how the film's going and like what his job is for the day, and Sam's like,
That's
no,
not what I meant.
the case.
I love this little sequence too, because Sam's like asking him questions and talking to him, and Dean's like, yeah. And then he turns to Dean like, as Sam goes, what? Like he's not paying attention to Sam at all, but he's fully like engrossed in his role as a PA.
Once Dean's done with his headset conversation, he takes Sam over to the sound guy, Dave, because Dean knows his name, and gets him to listen to the feedback, and Sam confirms that it's EVP and that it's a ghost on the track. So they walk to a trailer. As they're walking to this trailer, there's like a clothes rack full of clothes that cuts in front of them. If you look at that, some of the clothes they're wearing are on that because it's clothes from the set of Supernatural, including Dean's jacket that he's wearing as they're walking is on there. And like you can see like Sam kind of look at it and do sort of like a little double take.
I didn't notice that.
Little bits. It's so great. And so they walk to this trailer. Is this Dean's trailer? Like, whose trailer is this?
I don't know.
Are they living there? They're just squatting on set.
It kind of looks like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a nice trailer. I don't know. It's got to be somebody's, but nobody's using it. So
The thing is, though, that Dean's the PA, so he now knows everyone's schedules, right? So I guess he knows when people are coming and going. Yeah. So he has the dailies and he knows the lingo. And he managed to get these through gossip, like he's telling these little stories about all the people that he knows there and like who's sleeping with who. I just love it so much.
Like in this episode, you can tell he is such a people person.
Yeah.
Which is really unusual because he always seems to come across as like a bit of a loner. Mm-hmm. But I guess he's with his people. He's with his nerd friends.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Aww.
Like other PAs, for the most part, I would imagine, have as much movie knowledge as he does. Mm-hmm. And like are obsessed with movies as much as he is. Again, I feel like this is one of those stories of like, this is how I got into acting. I was a PA on set and somebody saw me. Or I was cast as an extra from being a PA kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it could be like, all those wannabe actors are just trying to be on set.
Mm-hmm. And just generally like what we know about Dean, like he likes electronics and things. Like he's been talking to the sound guy, like he's talked to him enough that he knows his name. He's managed to get the dailies from the people he knows the name of. I think it's all the technical stuff as well. Like we know that he likes that kind of things from the EMF reader that he's made and the fact that he worked on Baby, like all this kind of stuff. I think it's just really speaking to his interests.
I love the fact he also has like a utility belt on. Like you can see his like masking, like the pink masking tape. And as I watch they watch the dailies from Brad's death, and it always seems to be Sam. Like Sam has really good eyesight because he notices this like blur of a ghost. There's a bit of a nothing there. Dean explains again another movie trivia that happened. I didn't catch the name of the movie.
So it's on Three Men and a Baby, which is a comedy. This isn't like obviously not a horror movie. And there's a scene in that has like a young boy in the background that no one remembers being on set. I'm not sure if this was debunked at some point, but like, yeah, it's always like, was it a ghost?
Right, they think they caught a ghost on film. Which, they kind of ignore everything that they did in Asylum for this episode.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what they did for Asylum. They used the camera to find the orbing. Remember that?
Yeah, why didn't they bring that with them? It would have been obvious, like, they could have walked anyway.
Sam recognizes her as obviously because he's seen all the people, or he was researching who had died on set, which I think is amazing that he did recognize her, because the still that they show on screen could have been anybody. It's literally just like, it looks like a white mask on screen. And he's like, I know who she is. I'm like, okay, all right. Maybe because she's in black and white.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that helped. Yeah, that's true.
So Sam recognizes her because he's now at his computer and he's researching like who had died on set.
Yeah.
This is another moment where I was like, oh, this is a callback to being too light and not enough color, because in the background there's a neon pink wall being painted and it has green doors. Like, how much color can you get?
That's what that is. I was trying to place that set piece from something, because I was like, it's framed like they're really trying to pull focus onto that, like that woman painting that thing pink. So like, what is that a reference to? But I think you're right. I think it's showing that they're brightening the place up. Yes, I love that. Love that. Well done, Annabelle.
As Sam's researching, Dean's on his headset and he goes by Ozzy. Calls himself Ozzy.
Ozzy Osbourne, obviously.
Yeah, I'll go for Ozzy. No, I don't have a 20 on Tara. I think she's 10-100. Okay, copy that. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
And like, Sam's not impressed. Like, he's like, come on, we're supposed to be working this case, and obviously.
But Dean has been working really hard. He knows all the lingo. Like, he really has ingratiated himself into this. Like, oh.
We're then back on set, and the head PA says, okay, that's a wrap for the day, and gives like call time for the next day. I wrote, it says Hollywood things. Jay Wiley, who's another producer on the show, he's like, oh, you're kicking ass and taking names. And he's, you know, saying, McGee, you're a genius. This is going to be great. Like, I can't wait for you to, like, work on another project with you, kind of thing. Yeah. That's what I meant by saying Hollywood things. Like, hyping him up. Yeah. And then we cut to Sam and Dean, and they're in a graveyard, and, like, they're seeing all these, like, different grave markings. Again, there's a whole bunch of references in this scene that I didn't catch.
The main one's, like, Johnny Ramone, right? So from the Ramones, they see, like, a statue that kind of looks like the statue of him that is in the place where he's buried. Obviously it's not the same one because they're not there, but I think Dean's bought a map for $5 of like where famous people are buried, which is kind of a bit weird, to be honest.
This map is totally worth the $5.
Hey, we gotta go check out Johnny Ramone's grave when we're done here.
You wanna dig him up too?
Bite your tongue, heathen.
So they find the grave and start digging. It goes back to set. And the producer's like just walking around, like as if he got lost, like he didn't know where the exit was. Like, why are you now in set? Like, why are you on the set of your movie? Yeah. Rather than just walking to the exit. That's where I'm getting a little confused. Like, this is
my guess, if you want to make an explanation, is that he's on the phone. So maybe he got the phone call as he was leaving, so was just wandering around talking to this guy. So he's on the phone to somebody and he's basically calling McGee like an idiot.
Friggin' hate McGee's dailies. I can't control the guy, I'm telling you. Next one, I'm directing myself. What, you? No, Bob. You I love. You're a genius. You're kicking ass and taking names. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Talk to you later, babe. What a dick.
I realised that he's talking to someone called Bob, which must be Bob Singer. I mean...
Yes. So we go back to the grave and they are pouring a generous amount of salt onto the body. This shot of the... Like, when they open up the casket, they focus on her body for a really long time. Like, longer than usual, right? It wasn't just me.
Yeah, it was a weird shot. I don't know if they were just filling time, but like, I was like, you don't normally do this. They normally never show the contents of the coffin unless it's empty for emphasis. I wonder if they would, because this sequence is shot very cinematically, and I wonder if they were trying to parallel it with the other film by doing all these, like, because there's a lot of, like, you said, there's a lot of generous amounts of salt and stuff, and they take a long time lingering over, like, Sam pouring the lighter fluid out, and then like there's a really long shot of Dean like lighting the match or whatever and like holding it up to his face. Like there's no need for any of that. And the shot inside the grave looking up as they like throw it in, I love that, but like also completely unnecessary.
Well, so I actually wrote here like they can take their time because nobody's sort of in immediate danger that they can see.
That's true, actually.
And then so we're back to the producer and he sees another person and I was like, oh look, it's Amy's favourite shot, the back of someone's head.
I like it.
And it was a really long time before the person turned around. I was like, is this going to be like a jump scare or what's going on? Like this all of these sequences are really like extended and I do wonder if it was for time.
Because they didn't do a recap, so maybe they needed to fill it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what would they have recapped for this?
Exactly. It needed to go straight into that or it wouldn't have worked.
And the guy turns around and his face is like all cut up and nasty. We see the producer try to get away, but he gets dragged towards this giant industrial fan, and we get the first blood spatter of the episode.
Yes!
Like halfway through. Well, actually, no, more than halfway through, like 3/4 of the way through.
Do you think those industrial fans can suck you in? I think he's being dragged by the ghost. I think that shows you later that it's actually the ghost dragging him towards the fan. But do you think one of those could suck you in? Because I have stood in front of one of those fans. I was at like an aerospace museum and you can stand in this room in front of one of those big fans to like feel what like strong wind feels like. It's really strong. So yeah, I don't know. Science thoughts.
I think so because I think you can do it for airplanes for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But an airplane has like jet fuel running through it. It's not just like probably at a certain distance, yes. Like just maybe not as far as he was.
Yeah, but I think, like we said, he was probably getting dragged by the ghost. But like, yeah, no, I was watching it and I was like, I wonder if that could happen.
And then we go into an ad break, and then as we come back from the ad break, it's like a commercial for like this movie that they're filming. So it's basically all of the stuff that we've seen being filmed in this episode is compiled to make this commercial.
Yeah.
And then it does its whole like from the producers of Corn Massacre, which is like
Scarecrow.
Monster Truck, which is the truck from Route 666.
Yeah.
And then it completely diverges to Charlie's Angels 1 and 2. These two fake films to two real films. So who worked on those two movies that actually works on Supernatural or like is in connection with Supernatural?
Yeah, it is based on, so it's McGee, who's the director in this episode, is a producer on Supernatural, but he did actually direct Charlie's Angels.
Okay. Haha, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then it references because this is a sequel that they're filming, Hellraisers 2, The Reckoning.
Yeah. There's a lot of references in this. Every shot they use from, made by the producers of, are all shots from Supernatural. So the knife dipped in blood is from Bloodlust. The truck is obviously, like you said, from Route 666. There's all of them are from that. And then when you get to the credits at the end, all of the people listed in the credits are all crew from Supernatural, including like I picked out like Jerry Wannock, obviously, and Surge as well. He's also listed on there. So it's really nice. I love that they do this. It's a nice little shout out to the crew as well, I feel.
Yeah, that's really good. After the ad is run, and they include like the scream that she gets, like she actually, like Tara actually manages to produce.
Yeah.
And so we're back to Sam and Dean, and they're sort of getting confused because they obviously salt and burned this body, but someone has also just died again, and they're like, well, ghosts don't usually tag team. They walk off set. The director arrives and like, this is a really weird way of doing this. Like he's in this fancy car and like steps out I thought he was going to introduce like somebody new, and I was like, oh, it's just the director. Okay. Well, I don't know. It was really, I don't know. And they say that they're shutting down production for the day out of respect for Jay. And he gives this like motivational speech, but at the end is like, but we're not doing that today. Like, go home.
Go home, people. Nothing to see here. So once they've had this huddle and they've decided that they're shutting down production, we see Sam watching the dailies in that trailer. And I put here, are they living here? But we already talked about that.
It's clear he's been there a long time because he's really bored. Because he was looking through the dailies to see if he could find another ghost on screen, which he doesn't. But he's watching the scene of Tara reading from the book in Latin, and he like goes back and like listens back to it, and he's like, hang on a second, this sounds legit. And so they decide to go talk to the writer to find out like what he knows, essentially.
I thought it was really funny that he said he'd been watching that for 6 hours and like only realised it was a real implication when like Dean walked in. Like, I don't know why. I was like, maybe that's the first time he'd seen it, but it just seemed very convenient to me.
Yes, it definitely lined up quite perfectly. I guess because Dean has been out looking into the other people's deaths, and he finds out that the electrician had, because I guess they looked into how other people died, and the electrician probably died at the in a fan incident. Yeah. And he was cremated, so, you know, they were like, oh, what are we going to do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. They go and talk to this writer to see, like, why have you got a real spell in your movie?
No, dude, we're down for a few days. Force majeure. Yeah. It's cool, though. It gives me time to pitch that time travel thing. Yeah. All right, well, look, get back to me on this, all right? Seriously. No, I'm serious. Dude, are you serious? Because I'm serious. All right, cool.
There's, like, shots of his previous movies, like posters in the office. Again, all references to Supernatural episodes, obviously.
Now, okay, here's a question for you. Who wrote the time travel episodes in Supernatural? Because that time travel reference has to be something.
The only reference I could think that it was a Doctor Who one, and only because they've already made a Doctor Who reference in this show.
If somebody knows what that was in reference to, do let us know. Just because, like I said, like there's been too many references for that to be a throwaway.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you.
You know, Sam and Dean, or Dean's like, oh yeah, this is an amazing script. Like they're kind of hyping him up a little bit, and they ask about the actual like incantations, and the writer's like, oh yeah, that was from the original script. I had to change 90% of it to make it this, and then 10% to make it awesome. Essentially saying he rewrote everything in the script. And they tell him it was Walter Dixon who actually wrote the original one. So for some reason he gives them 2 copies of the original script because they're both reading through. Dean's into it. Like, he's really into this, like, movie. And Sam's just, like, annoyed.
And it reads like a how-to manual of conjuration. Like a textbook on how to summon ghosts and get them to do whatever you want.
Yeah, like kill people.
Yep.
And again, it makes sense that Dean would be nerding out of this. He seems to love movies. And, like, why would you not want to watch a movie that maybe was accurately depicting what you actually did for a living rather than getting it really wrong? I talked to every single science movie I've ever watched in my whole life.
Yes. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Why is your glassware never labeled?
I feel like that's for everybody who's in the a specific profession that gets it wrong all the time. And like, I think people appreciate it when they do it right. Anyway.
So it kind of goes to seeing this writer then talking to Walter on the set because he asked him to meet him there. And Walter is not happy because they essentially kind of stole his script, changed everything, and then demoted him to PA. It's essentially what seems to have happened here. So he has like a weird amulet thing and he starts the invocation. The same ghost appears with his face all cut up, starts dragging Martin, the writer, into the fan. And as he's doing so, Walter is still ranting about like how they stole his dreams and like how they ruined his script. And I wasn't really listening. I just put Walter does a rant.
As he was doing all this ranting, I was like, make an independent movie.
Yeah, that's true. But like also, I do feel for him. Like if you feel like you've made your big break and you know, sold your script and then they change everything. There's a really good Netflix series which I just finished watching called Brand New Cherry Flavor, which it's very American Horror Story reminiscent, but it's about this exact thing almost, where this girl has her script stolen, so she gets revenge by putting a curse on the guy. It's pretty good. I would recommend it if you like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess because the name of the movie that he was actually going to make was something else. It wasn't Hellraiser.
No.
It was Ghost something. It was on the front of their script, but I didn't write it down.
It was Lord of the Dead.
Lord of the Dead, that's right. So it wasn't even going to be like, it wasn't even supposed to be this movie that was being made.
Well, no, because it suggests the name of the movie is precisely what's happening, right? It's about someone who summons ghosts and then gets them to like enact revenge or whatever. He's basically written this episode instead of written the movie that's in this episode. Look, it's getting very meta. So obviously, as this guy is getting dragged to the fan, Dean turns up and shoots it with a shotgun filled with salt in classic Dean fashion. Love that line.
You were one hell of a PA.
Yeah, I know.
I know. It's so good. Like, Dean knows he's good at that job.
Yes. Sam tries to sort of reason with Walter, and you know, Walter continues to explain that he worked really hard on this movie, and they've taken everything. And rant continue. Wow.
Sam is not convincing enough, obviously, and so Walter's doing the invocation, and all these ghosts appear. There's like four ghosts, three ghosts.
Just three.
Yeah. And as they start to advance on the gang, the ghosts disappear. But then Sam gets tackled, because of course it's Sam who gets tackled, and they all run off. As they're running, there's like light bulbs like flashing and stuff. It looks very cool.
I love the fact they like escape to the cabin, and like they're like holding up against the door, and then they turn around, and of course, because it's a film set, there's only 3 walls.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh crap. It's so good. Like, Dean's line here, did you spot this?
Yes.
He says,
"What a girls, we'll get together, have a few laughs."
Yeah, it's Die Hard.
It's Die Hard. Of course they had to. I mean, I say of course they had to put a Die Hard reference in. It doesn't fit this theme at all. It's just they wanted Dean to say like that.
Yeah, because like it doesn't fit at all. Because he's the one who wanted to go to LA. It wasn't.
And like, if you're watching the subtitles on this episode, they even put it in quotation marks, so you have to definitely know that he's making a reference. Like, it's shoehorned in, and I love it. So,
and it wasn't even released at like Christmas time.
No, I mean,
or anything. I wonder if it was like a behind the scenes thing.
Can we fit a Die Hard reference in this episode somewhere?
You know, the famous line from Jaws, like, we're going to need a bigger boat. Mm-hmm. That actually came about because the, like, production team had a small boat to film everything, like, to take everything. So it was, like, a joke line.
Yeah.
And then the actor just said it on screen. Like, and he kept doing it. Like, Spielberg didn't want it in the movie. Like, he didn't like it. But the actor just kept saying it, and so he ended up keeping it instead of saying his real lines. So I'm wondering if like this is something along those lines too. Like somebody keeps quoting this line on set, and they're like, okay, like, we got to put it in an episode because like,
absolutely,
like a PA or like a rigger or somebody was like, oh, go to the coast, like, have a few laughs.
It just delivers it so lovely. Like, oh yeah. Great. So they're obviously, yes, you said they're in the cabin, and
so Martin's like, oh, ghosts are real? Like, what is this?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
he's not, like, he's astonished that it's actually, this is what is actually really happening.
Yeah.
And Sam, like, pulls out his phone and is like, well, you caught the ghost on another camera, maybe you'll catch it on this one. So he's using this phone with horribly, like, put in screen.
Again, completely forgetting what happened in Asylum. They already did this.
Exactly. It's just... Anyway, okay. We'll just forget that Asylum exists. Which is a shame, because it's a really good episode. And, he's like, oh, there it is. And magically Dean knows exactly where. Well, like, wouldn't you just give the phone to the person?
No.
I guess he has to use two hands.
They're doing the psychic link. It's established. They have one. If
true.
Sam knows where a ghost is, Dean knows where to shoot. Like,
because you can just point and that's exactly where they are.
Yeah. Also, you don't need to be that accurate with a shotgun in that small
That's
thing.
true.
That's true.
That's true. That's very true. Sam hands over his phone to Martin to, like, continue while Sam goes after Walter. Martin says something along the lines of, like, he can't believe there's an afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
And Dean responds,
Well, there's an afterlife, all right. But mostly it's a pain in the ass.
Yep.
which is true. I mean, if there wasn't, well, yeah, I mean, a good portion of their lives are affected by the afterlife.
That's true, actually, yeah. I mean, specifically, I think, yeah, obviously he's talking about ghosts here on his top 10 most hated monsters, but, yeah. But Martin doesn't have much of a reaction to there being an afterlife, finding out that where you go when you die, so good for him, I guess. He's very well adjusted.
This is true. This is very true. Sam catches up to Walter and destroys the talisman, and Sam's like, I wouldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so this, obviously this is a much later reference, but this feels very much like Doctor Strange, whereas like you should have read to the end because that's where they put the warnings.
Yes.
Surely in your research you would have found out like how to destroy, how to sever the connection with the ghosts rather than just destroying the amulet.
Well, this exact same thing happens in Faith, when the amulet she has gets destroyed, the Reaper turns on her. So I think Sam immediately was like, oh, yeah, seen this before.
That actually happens in The Princess and the Frog, the Disney movie.
Mm-hmm.
The amulet gets destroyed and it gets taken.
I think this is it. Like, it's again, like, there's so many tropes in this episode. Like, he's had control over the ghosts and he's been telling them to kill people. So once he destroys the amulet, they turn on him. And they kill him, like, really brutally. Like, it's all, like, blood coming through his shirt and stuff. Mm-hmm. Martin stops to take a photo. I think that's what he's doing. Or, like, filming it.
No, he's doing the same thing to look at the ghosts.
I thought he was being a bit more callous than that. I thought that he was taking a photo, like just the way he took out the phone. He was like, yeah.
I guess because they wanted to see what was going on and they knew that they could see the ghosts through the camera.
That makes sense as well. Yeah, I like that a lot.
It looks very zombie movie like actually, like when like a human is like left in a pile of zombies and they just like literally rip it apart. And that's it. I mean, that's kind of how it ends. And then it starts with, we come back and what we've just witnessed is now in the movie that they're filming.
Of course.
But I don't understand. How come the spirits appear in the camera phone?
The video must pick up their frequencies in a way that our eyes can't.
Right there!
Cut! Oh, print that one. That's in the movie. Oh!
The director's like really into it. Like his eyes are wide and he's leaning forward like, this is the best stuff I've ever seen. And Sam and Martin are talking and Sam says, you find out about the afterlife and this is what you do with it. And his response is like, well, I had to jazz out the page a little bit. I'm like, he's so like not into this. He doesn't care that there's an afterlife. He's just like, yeah, I'll just use it to my advantage.
He'd almost make a great hunter just because of the fact he's so unaffected by all of this. Like, yeah, whatever.
I mean, he's found out there's an afterlife, but not necessarily that there is actually a hell or a heaven. So he's only been given proof that ghosts exist, so he probably like, well, anybody could be a ghost then. Like, we all just stay here and be ghosts. As Sam walks off set, he passes a trailer and the trailer door opens and Dean casually walks out.
Yeah.
We know something's up because his hair is different.
That's so true. So you see Tara obviously appearing in a bathrobe and she repeats the line of,
"You're one hell of a PA."
Thank you.
And as they walk off, he just like grabs a burrito.
Yeah.
And he walks away.
Mm-hmm.
And they walk off into the sunset, but actually it's not. It's a set piece.
But then they do walk into a real sunset. This is what I love about this shot, okay? Because obviously walking into a sunset is a very old Western trope, so kind of see them walking in and then they pull that set piece away. But then as the camera zooms up, or like pans up, you see that it is actually sunset. Mm-hmm. Also, you see very clearly that that is not LA, because there's like pine trees and it's like raining. So I love that, because it's like, well, none of this was almost real. Like, do you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
it's very fourth wall breaky.
The last line of the episode is,
God, I love this town.
What a fun one. What a fun one. We needed that.
I think so too. We really did need this episode to be fun. There's a few things with this, so like, I have to bring this up. So obviously this episode ends with Sam finding Dean in Tara's trailer, a character which is apparently mirroring Jensen Ackles. Like, she acts a lot like, kind of, you know, she has the same role as him in this movie. Like I said, she's kind of the main character. Says son of a bitch, takes Polaroids on set. Like, okay, I don't know what they were trying to say with Dean leaving her trailer. Okay, I'll let you percolate on that one.
I think I feel like it's not really saying anything. I think it's more just like Dean being Dean.
I do just sometimes feel like a lot of the things that Jensen seems to do, like with the car and the beer company and the music, all just seems to be like trying to impress Dean in some way. Like, I know he doesn't exist, but like sometimes I feel like he's trying to live a life that Dean would be proud of, and I don't know where the line between actor and like character are being blurred so much there sometimes, and it just speaks to that, I feel.
Yeah.
I mean, this was an excellent episode for Dean. Like, Sam's barely in this episode. He's there for reactions and for exposition, and that's basically it. I'm sorry, Sam. It's just true. One thing that I do really want to talk about is how well Dean fits into the role of PA in this. Like, how quickly he takes to it, like a duck to water, as they say.
Definitely. And, I mean, like I said, if the Roadhouse didn't work out, would he do this instead?
Mm-hmm. So, like, at the moment, Dean's retirement plan is, as you said, like a bar or something. He doesn't really think he should have a retirement plan, but let's not make this sad. But I think you said earlier, like, he's such a people person. I really think this is such an insight into who Dean would be as a person if he hadn't had to be hunting. Like, the type of role that he would want to do. So I think he'd like a job where he was in a team. And then I started thinking, like, well, what has he mentioned that he wanted to do? And I was like, oh, he would be a firefighter, right? Absolutely. Yep. Like, learn all the lingo, learn how everything works really quickly, learn everyone's names, worked well on a team. Like, it's totally, this is it.
You know, he managed to get things from people.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I don't mean that in like in a bad way, but like he got to know the sound guy Dave, and so therefore he could show Sam the sound.
Mm-hmm.
He needed the dailies, so he was friends with the people who can make copies of the dailies. And you know, being in a team environment, that's really important to be a personable person.
Mm-hmm. And we don't often see this side of Dean. You're right. He's either usually hustling or flirting with other people. sometimes you see kind of these brief moments where he's kind to people, like with the woman who in the car, or when there's people who he has to look after during hunts. But it's, at the moment for his character, it's kind of few and far between. The only people that we see him being person with and nice to is usually Sam, and that's usually an undercurrent of like pranking and like brotherly arguing at the same time. So
I think that there's a little bit of Jensen and Dean like merging in this episode.
Yeah.
Because like, again, I feel like when you see the behind the scenes of them on set, like he's very personable with everybody, knows everybody's names and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel that too. I think I like it because if you actually think about it, trying to erase the rest of Supernatural from my mind in the moment, this is the first time we really do see Dean like this. And like, I think that personable quality is carried on, and they do really play on it at some points. And what's really interesting is like, you would expect that to be Sam, but he would, in this situation, if he had tried to be the PA and like become part of that environment, I feel for Sam it would have been a lot more awkward.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to say that Sam almost looks down on the position of PA, because he doesn't, but he does say that, you know, they're essentially slaves.
Yeah.
And Dean doesn't see it that way. He sees it as like helping, whereas Sam doesn't. Like, Sam sees it as like just work and like, yeah.
And like at Dean's core, that's what he is. He's a helper. He helps everybody. I mean, also, I think it's kind of Dean. Like, he doesn't really feel like he belongs anywhere, so it's quite easy for him to fit in anywhere, if that makes sense. Like, if you kind of do have that feeling that you don't really fit in, it's kind of sometimes easier to walk into a situation and just be yourself in that situation and fit in anyway. Whereas I feel like Sam feels like he does belong somewhere, so maybe finds that harder to do. Like, it's difficult for him to step out of his comfort zone in that way. Yeah,
and again, as we said earlier, Dean loves movies and loves like that kind of, he loves TV, he loves all of this kind of stuff. So I feel like if you, again, there's two types of people. There's the people who will never want to be on set because they love it so much and they don't want to sort of see behind the curtain. Whereas I feel like with Dean, he's already seen behind the curtain of real life.
Yes.
That to see the behind the scenes of a movie where it's like it's just sort of a dream come true for him. Like he's okay with breaking like that wonder, I guess, or of movie making magic and being like entrenched in it.
Yeah, I think so. I thought it was really interesting for his character this episode because, like I said, we haven't really seen that side of him, but it's something that we definitely see later on. And it really leans into his nerdiness. And they've kind of hinted at it, like, a lot. But I feel like this is like, oh yeah, he's a big old nerd.
You know, it is kind of funny that, you know, we've referenced Asylum twice in this episode. Well, in Asylum, he makes so many film references in that episode. And, you know, so as you were talking, I was thinking, like, so the last episode, it was Dean who was sort of off researching and doing stuff.
Yeah.
And so we got to see into Sam's character more, but we kind of didn't. Not really.
No.
But then with this one, we definitely do with Dean. I'm like, so what are they trying to say? Are they trying to say anything?
I think I kind of made reference to this before, but I think the problem with Sam is that they wrote him too much as the hero character. He's the one on the hero's journey of this, and sometimes they can come across as fairly two-dimensional. Like, I still kind of think about Luke Skywalker sometimes. I feel like over 3 movies, you learn some things about him, but he isn't as fully developed a character sometimes as like Leia or Han, right? Because being the hero of the story, that's your story arc. Whereas for other characters, they have to give them motivations and reasons to be there, and it tends to make a more fleshed out and developed character, which is what happened to Dean and then who became the main character.
This is very true. But then they didn't build on Sam either, though, after.
This is it. Then this is what they should have done, because in later seasons, they had the chance to do it. When the season was more heavily focused around Dean's story arc, like think about the Mark of Cain, think about Purgatory, all that kind of stuff. They had a chance then to really focus on like Sam's motivations and flesh him out fully as a character. And I do feel, and that's not to say I don't see Sam as like a fully realized character, because I do actually, I feel like I do understand his motivations and stuff, but there's some situations, like I feel like any situation that you could present, I would know how Dean would react to that situation. Whereas Sam, there's some things where there would be gaps in that, and like I wouldn't be completely sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the times that we do see sort of any kind of development from Sam get completely torn away by Dean coming back. is what I'm thinking of. Like I think of season 6. I think of the beginning of season 15.
Yeah,
like we see who Sam can be, and like what he's actually. Well, we know he's good at research, and we know he's incredibly smart, but we also see beyond that. In those moments, especially 15.
Yeah, I agree. I think part of the problem with Sam is that often when they try to do this fleshing out of his character, they involved it in some kind of like romantic relationship as well. Yeah, which is always like fraught with difficulty for Sam anyway. Which we know that about his character. Like it's difficult for him. So they needed. I kind of feel like we needed to see who Sam was without Dean. Because I feel like we knew that for Dean. Like, we know who Dean is without Sam. I don't know if we know who Sam is without Dean. Anyway, getting, like, well into their characters here.
Well, yeah. And again, so I recently watched the first episode of Walker. And I don't know who wrote this, but the CW has a really bad problem with dead wife syndrome.
Yeah.
Because his wife dies in the first 5 minutes of the episode. Yeah. And it's like, well, why do I care? It's like they didn't learn anything.
Yeah. Develop the characters. Like, I need to care about them in order to be invested in the story, which is why Supernatural is so good, is because I fully care about these characters. Like, I'm fully invested in who they are as people. And it's why I didn't care about Jess, because you never developed her as a person. And like, if you're like in Walker as well, like, why would we care about his wife? We don't know who she is as a person. We don't care about her. And that sounds really awful. Like, it sounds really callous, but it's a TV show. Like, you need to be invested.
You need to show. Yeah. You need to show things. You can't just like be like, okay, this is his wife. Like, feel something for her, for them. The only good thing is that it's on HBO Max over here, so Gerard is getting that HBO money.
Good.
So good on him.
Good for him. But overall, I think this episode is great. What I think that it shows as well is that Supernatural's able to poke fun at itself. Like, some shows take themselves way too seriously, and this is something that I think Lucifer learned really well from Supernatural. And like, you can see the crossover of some of the people who have worked on that show, actually. And you can kind of understand why Lucifer worked so well, because I think they took the lessons from Supernatural of like, you need to make fun of yourself. It can be serious. I mean, the nature of that show anyway. But I'm glad that this wasn't just a one-off making fun of themselves. Like, they do continue this, because I think sometimes, especially when the show is dark and heavy as this, I think it's important to break the fourth wall and be like, it's okay, guys.
Right.
None of this is real.
Yeah, because, I mean, as we said, the events of Heart, like, it's pretty traumatizing.
Yeah, actually.
Like, as much as, you know, there are flaws in that episode, in like getting heavily attached to somebody in the space of like 2 days,
Mm-hmm.
that still is like, to me, kind of like, I mean, yeah, I guess you could build a friendship in 2 days, but I don't feel like Sam's reaction is quite not warranted. Anyway, I don't know. I guess because he wants to save her so much. So
Mm-hmm.
it's more of like a reflection of himself rather than a reflection on her.
Yeah.
So to then turn around and have this very meta fourth wall breaking episode.
Yeah.
And, you know, just to be explained away as like, oh, it's for R&R. Like,
yeah. It's for R&R for us, though, isn't it, as viewers?
Yeah.
Like, that's what it's there for. What's weird about it is that this is season 2. Like, generally, shows don't do this kind of meta breaking until season 5, you know, when they're kind of starting to run out of ideas, maybe. Like, I think of the musical episode of Buffy, which I love, by the way. Like, I'm not dissing that at all because it's amazing. But, like, also, it was kind of like, well, this is the time to do it. We've been on the air for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to try and pull this move in season 2 is like, yeah, it's a strong move. I know we missed references in this, so please send us any that you'd like us to mention in our wrap-up. Totally do so. I want to know all of them. I want a full comprehensive knowledge of this episode so I can be the irritating person talking through it when I watch it with my friends.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we need it for. So I wonder, actually, you know, this episode does bring into question, like, how much of an influence did the execs have? Because this next episode is also, it's serious, but it's not that serious.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Because it's Folsom Prison Blues.
Oh, yes.
And so this is going to be heavy, like, B-plot episode, because Hendrickson's back.
Oh, we love Hendrickson. I think it's really interesting what you said there about how much did the studio have an effect on the show, and I feel like this is something that we will come back to.
Yes.
Oh, little tease there. Just a little tease.
So that was this episode. We'd like to thank the Pixel Agora for our lovely episode art or podcast art. And, you know, make sure to follow us on all of our social medias. We're on Tumblr, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of the things. You can also watch/listen to our podcast on YouTube. So we're Escaping Purgatory podcast on all of those things. Let us know what you thought. Definitely point out all of those Easter eggs that we had missed, because there are so many. And we look forward to talking with you.
Yeah. So this week we took a peek behind the curtain and saw a really pretty sunset. So hopefully next week we can escape supernatural purgatory. Bye.
Bye, guys.